Yes. Greetings, 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 greetings. Welcome, welcome. My name is Kahlil Cummings, percussion, virtuoso, composer, educator, all those things. I want to thank, first and foremost, I want to thank my ancestors for giving me this life, for blessing me, for allowing me to be here. I want to also thank the ancestors of the world as well as my bloodline. And the African, Black, and Indigenous ancestors that created this beautiful cultural stamp of the world through music and dance and culture that influences the entire globe. I want to honor all their stories because it's because of them that I even have a story, right? So I want to do that first and foremost. I want to thank LP. I want to thank Jerry, the whole LP family, for giving me this opportunity to share my story with y'all. So before I get deep into my wherever I'm going to go with my story, if there's any questions or any comments or anything that anybody has, bless me up and we'll get started. Bless. All right, Cancun, Mexico in the house. Mexico in the house. Yeah. So here we are, January 21, 2021, chapter 21, LP Stories. Bless, bless, bless. So, wow, how did this whole thing begin for me? So I'll talk a little bit. Yeah, the 21s, right? And the spiritual system is connected to, often we connect 21 to Eshu in the African Yoruba tradition, right? So for me, there's a lot of parallels, a lot of doors, a lot of things opening up in this time. So this is beautiful to be able to rock with y'all on this day. So let's get it. Yeah, fist up. If you know anybody that trains with me, when I do lives, when I do classes, I always tell people to put the fist emojis up. Show me that you're there by putting the fist up. It's also showing strength, right? I love fists. So yeah. So I was born in Los Angeles. My father's side of the family comes from Guyana, South America, the land of many waters, right? And it's something that I'm connecting with more. I actually have recently traveled to Guyana, and it was so beautiful just being home, right? And on my mom's side, I have Native American, Choctaw, Cherokee, Native American blood. My grandmother was born in the Indian reservation, so I'm a mutt. My blood is, immersed in so much, culture, indigenous and African culture. So where do I begin with my story? I would say that my first performance, people always trip when I say this, my first performance in my life that I did was my kindergarten graduation. And literally, my dad, he was a musician. So he, was like, okay, we're going to get the drums out. I had a djembe that was bigger than me. I had a little African outfit on with kente cloth. And I was playing while the kids were coming in, to the room and stuff like that. That was literally my first performance. So I touched the drum very early on. Interesting. I was very shy. Oh, see, there you go. That's little Kahlil. Little Kahlil in the house, rocking the LP conga. You see that? Since day one, it was destined. It was destined. So yeah, that was kind of like how my childhood was. These drums were all in the house, and I would see my dad rocking these drums, and I was really shy. Interesting enough, what my dad would do, he was in the cultural community. here in Los Angeles. There's a cultural hotspot named Leimert Park. And anybody knows LA culture, the ethnology of the music scene out here, that was a cultural hotspot for so many things coming together. You know, you had the Cubans at the time coming in the late 80s. You know, you had the jazz community, Billy Higgins, and more. You had, you know, an Afro-Brazilian community. You had the first Ifa temple, 𝗟𝗡𝗦𝗘, was in Leimert Park, spiritual community, right? So all these things were coming together in that place. So my dad would go there and he would take me all the time. In fact, you know, actually, when I get into my story, I'll tell you that a lot of things that make me up manifested in that place alone. The little fountain in that park is famous. I used to play and jump around in that fountain, you know, when I was 3, 4 years old. So my dad always used to say I was baptized, right, in the fountain of Leimert Park. So a lot of heavy hitters, musicians would come through there. And my dad was very unique. He would bring them over to the house. And usually I feel like the day that he would do it was Wednesday. So every Wednesday, you know, we had these heavy hitters in the house and they would jam. They would play everything from bata to congas to djembe, all that. To name a few, you know, LA legends, you had like folks like Bill Summers, you know, you had folks like Bobby Matos, you know, you had, you know, my teacher, you know, like Lorenzo, you had Skip Burney, you had so many. I'm missing so many names, Tambu, you know, a lot of heavy hitters would come through the house and sometimes they would stay. And my dad would be like, just teach me. So imagine I'm growing up and I'm hearing that going on all the time. It just kind of, the rhythms and stuff started to get inside of me. I didn't even know. So I love the drums. And when everybody would leave, I would go into the drum room and I'd be playing by myself. My dad would listen. He would try not to act like he's listening to me because whenever he would come in the room, I'll stop. So that's kind of how it happened for me. My dad bought me a djembe. That was actually one of my first instruments. And so we were at Centinela Park. There used to be an African dance class that would go on. And, you know, he put it in front of me. There was a dance class going on and all the drummers are going. He puts the drum in front of me and I just sat there. And actually I started crying. I was like embarrassed, was scared. So my dad's like, I don't know, man. He plays. I'll take him home. And before I had a drum, what I would do, my first drum, honestly, was a sparkling water bottle. I used to turn those upside down. I used to get some crazy sounds out of it. I'd play it and I would mimic the sounds that I heard, right? So he's like, I know he can play. So they tricked me, actually. This is a famous story. So we're in the parking lot. My dad sits my drum there and he's like, come on, Kahlil, play. Show the people you can play. It's like, nah, I was acting scared. So they tricked me. My dad's like, watch this. He's like, everybody turn around and act like you're not paying attention to him. So everybody turns around and I'm doing my little kid stuff, right? I'm like, and I start playing. And then they're listening. They're like, look, he's playing. So finally I start getting into it in my own zone and I start mimicking a rhythm that I heard them playing in class. And I get into it, I start playing louder, and finally they all turn around like, yeah, he's drumming. And I saw everybody's reaction and I was like, oh, this is cool. So I started playing to them. And that honestly was my breakthrough. From that point on, you know, I just love music. I love drumming. And the djembe, I would say, you know, I strongly feel that I was born for that instrument. I came onto this planet, you know, to connect with that instrument. I can say another notable performance was there was an event that used to happen. And I believe the people that were primary organizers of that event were the 𝗟𝗣 family. But it was an event called The Africans Are Coming. And there it is. Yeah. There I am right there. My dad's to the left, I guess the left of me. And there's some elders there. Also in this picture, something that is really fun information. The little boy that you see to the right is also a very notable drummer with LP. His name is 𝗟𝗣 𝗦𝗧𝗢𝗥𝗜𝗍. So that's 𝗟𝗟 𝗦𝗧𝗢𝗥𝗍 right there to the right. Big up, another LP family. So yeah, it kind of went like that for me. So they put me on stage, and I was amongst adults my entire drum life. That's what I always remember being in classes, being around adults all the time. So I was like the secret weapon. They put Kahlil out there, and I go do a little drum solo, and I'd be like, little boy is playing, So basically, something that's really unique about my father is that, he established himself as a drummer in the community, but something that he did early on is that he put me in the hands of particular elders and said, yo, really take my son. Like, that's your apprentice. Take him. And I can say my journey is very unique because, I was a student to some pioneers in the African diaspora that, I developed a really, 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 really profound relationship with them, even in life, beyond just being, a student of the tradition. So one of my first influences, I'm going to speak of a few, was a maestre in capoeira by the name of 𝗟𝗡𝗦𝗘. And 𝗟𝗡𝗦𝗘 is, a legend in his own right. He's really highly responsible for Afro-Brazilian culture coming, to the US and beyond. He was a part of a famous movie, Only the Strong, that really took capoeira culture and really just put it outside of Brazil. And on top of that, he was a musician, a master in capoeira, but he was a musician and a dancer as well. And here we go, back to Leimert Park, the story, right? My dad was doing a performance there, and his performance was before Master 𝗟𝗑𝗪𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓, right? And so then Master 𝗟𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓 didn't have drummers at the time at that particular performance. So he saw my dad playing. He's like, hey, can you hold down these rhythms from my performance? My dad's like, sure. So my dad jumps in, he learns the rhythms, he holds it down. And after Master 𝗟𝗓𝗪𝗓𝗓 said, okay, whatever you want, I teach capoeira at the Santa Monica Airport out here. And he said, you're more than welcome. Please come train. Please come, So my dad brought me. And from there, that's how I sparked this relationship with Master 𝗟𝗓𝗪𝗓𝗓. And from there, that opened the door as far as Afro-Brazilian drumming. And I want to stress, sometimes we think in the diaspora, we disconnect the dots, right, of African people, right, or indigenous people. We disconnect the dots. When the transatlantic slave trade happened, we understand that Africans went all these different places. And, a lot of times certain places more than others get disconnected, from Africa. That's how people look at it. So when they think Brazil, they think like samba, they think, samba feathers and all that. And, sometimes they have to be reminded that Brazil in particular, has more Africans than even some places in Africa, meaning that there's a large population of African Brazilians. So when you're talking about capoeira, when you're talking about candomblé or Orisha drumming, when you're talking about samba reggae, all these forms, these are African forms, okay? African influenced music that transformed in these places, in that particular place in Brazil. So from there, I learned so many instruments because so many instruments came to Brazil. So, that was my influence. On top of that, in Leimert Park, remember I mentioned you had all these Cubans, that there was a wave of Afro-Cubans that came to LA. So my dad also connected with them. So when that happened, I also got involved in Afro-Cuban tradition, just as deep, with bata, right? With congas, all the different forms coming from the Afro-Cuban tradition. And of course, most influence in my life, I would say the teacher that influenced me the most, I would say musically, would later on be 𝗟𝗪𝗘𝗧𝗓𝗏. And the interesting thing, the history there about 𝗟𝗪𝗘𝗧𝗏, if you don't know, you should know that he's highly responsible, a 𝗟𝗪𝗏𝗘𝗦 Fola, right? A master 𝗟𝗪𝗏𝗘𝗦 Fola, highly responsible for the way that 𝗟𝗪𝗏 expanded, okay? Talk a little bit of history. So when you look at the 60s, right? A couple of things were happening, right? You saw the civil rights movement eventually manifest. You saw the civil rights movement that was happening in the US influence other movements in the world. You saw in Africa, they began to get rid of imperialist powers, right? And become independent countries, free of other imperialist, influences. Started to kick out the French and the Portuguese and the Spanish, right? So you notice that started happening. You noticed in South America, same thing was happening, the liberation of South America and these countries. So this started happening all over the world, which is in a way created a renaissance, right? We talked about that. There's some close friends of mine, a lot of us doing a lot of work together. I'm gonna give a lot of shout outs at the end. We were recently talking about the renaissance that happened in the culture. And you notice that whenever you look at like oppression and these things and people liberating themselves, you always notice that a renaissance in the art happens. That's what happened with jazz. And in the 60s, the music and the cultural influences that went out and created the stamp of really African and indigenous culture really flourished this time, despite all these things that were happening. So I say that to say that, the African Americans, your Stokely Carmichael, your Malcolm X's were influencing what was happening in Africa, your Sekou Touré, your Kwame Nkrumah, your Haile Selassie Lumumba. All these people were starting to come together. And what was going to happen, it was a dawn of a Pan-Africanist movement, right? That was supposed to happen. And so what you notice, Guinea, particularly Guinea, right? The Republic of Guinea, they kicked out the French, and under the leadership of 𝗟𝗩 𝗦𝗧𝗢𝗥𝗘𝗦, they began to create an African ballet, which is, at this point, was an African ballet, an ensemble of African drummers and dancers, singers, musicians, artists, right? And at this time, they were called Ballet Africains. Now, this is important history because this is the first time really in the world that you started to see this performance of culture on stage, right? And at that point, it influenced the entire world. So what happened is when 𝗟𝗩 𝗦𝗧𝗢𝗥𝗘𝗦 created this, you started seeing groups leave Africa, right? And Guinea was really the spearhead that led that movement. They went to the UN and they performed. And later on, that ballet minimized because Africa's a big continent, right? So you're trying to put all these different countries and influences and musics and dance into one. That's a lot to deal with. So eventually that ballet particularly minimized into a Guinea ballet, and they called Les Ballets Africains. And they had Ballet Joliba, they had the Ballet des Militaires, right? So when Mamadi, the troupe that he was with, Joliba, leaving Guinea, performing all over the world, eventually at some point they came to the US and they touched down in Los Angeles, right? By this time, I believe it was the 70s. And this history sometimes gets lost, but it's important to know the ethnology of the djembe, especially in Los Angeles. At this point, Mamadi's first class that he taught to Westerners outside of Africa, right? Outside of being with the ballet, the first class that he taught was in Los Angeles, okay? So in a way, you can say he planted a seed, right? And so this was in the 70s. I think he was trapped here. He was stuck here. They lost their visa, so they were stuck in Los Angeles as a troupe for about 2 months. Same thing happened to an elder djembe of Mamadi, also known as Famadou Konate, with Les Ballet Africains. They were here for a particular time span, stuck in LA particularly, and they taught. So you created a community of drummers and dancers that were already here playing, right? And then now you had this teacher come. So they're planting seeds, right? And those seeds grow into different ways. So my dad picked up the djembe in the community through these stamps that were happening of people coming here, Mamadi Keita in particular in this story. So in a way, the seed that he planted here manifested into, me basically finding the djembe. And, if I had known that, my dad had recordings and stuff like that, if I had known that eventually later on in life that I would be working very closely in developing a spiritual relationship with Mamadi, I never would have guessed. It was a dream for me. So that manifested, that happened. And eventually we were associated with a group by the name of 𝗟𝗣 𝗦𝗧𝗢𝗥𝗜𝗘𝗦 that brought Mamadi to teach workshops. I believe I was 11 years old. I'm bouncing around a little bit because by the time I was 11, I had already gone to Brazil and studied in Brazil, in Bahia, Brazil, capoeira and music. So now I'm drumming. Mamadi 𝗟𝗦𝗘 comes to Los Angeles. He teaches a workshop. He says, "Who's that kid?" I was the only kid in the entire room. There had to be, I don't know, everybody came out. So it had to be like 70 people in the room. I was the only kid. I remember the rhythm and everything he was teaching. And it was complicated stuff as far as 𝗟𝗡𝗩. And I picked it up like that. So when the class was over, he says, "Yo, I want to work with this kid." My dad was like, "He's yours." Mamadi said, "Bring him to Africa, bring him to Guinea." Because at that point he would do big camps in Guinea every year. So eventually I got a chance to travel to Guinea. I got a chance to do a, official spiritual ritual to be under his tutelage. And thus my journey began with 𝗟𝗡𝗩, and I've been connected to Mamadi 𝗟𝗡𝗦 ever since. I've had the privilege of one of the most profound moments in my life, I could say, when I was 13. Okay, so this is probably first or second time I was in Guinea. So 13 years old. And so Mamadi's camp is going on, and every couple of evenings he would invite different troops to come and perform, right? And this particular night, he invited two legendary 𝗟𝗩𝗘𝗦 to come join him in a performance of 𝗟𝗩𝗪𝗘𝗦 and 𝗟𝗪𝗪𝗘𝗦 𝗟𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗙 these are legends. These are like the pioneers, the elders of 𝗟𝗡𝗩, especially at that time. So they're coming over the house, and so everybody's all excited, like, "Oh my God, this is rare." Previously, they hadn't come together. Probably at that point, for like 6-something years to record an album. But it's a rare event that you see them all in the same place. They're coming to the house. So I'm like, "Oh my God, I'm about to see Jesus." I'm like a little kid in Candyland. I'm like, "Ooh, I get to see Mamadi, Fanduba." So I'm chilling. We ate dinner, and I'm like in one of the back rooms, and then Mamadi comes running in the room. He says, "Kahlil, do you have a 𝗟𝗡𝗩?" And I said, "Sure." He says, "Do you have a good 𝗟𝗡𝗩?" I was like, "I don't know what's going on." I'm 13 years old. My dad's like, "What's up?" He was like, "Do you have a strat?" I'm like, "Sure." He was like, "Bring your 𝗟𝗡𝗩." And at this point, I'm like, "What's going on?" So basically, I go outside. All my brothers and families helping me out, find a good 𝗟𝗩𝗩. He's like, "I want you to play with me." And at this point, the elders had decided that they wanted to perform with their apprentices. So Famadou had his apprentice, Fanduba had his son, and Mamadi wanted me to represent him. So imagine, I'm a little kid, I'm 13. I used to play in the house imagining moments like that. Even before I had my own drum, when I had the sparkling water bottle, I would imagine that I'm playing with these legendary people. Okay, I would make believe this moment. Here I am, 13 years old, and I'm experiencing this moment, to play with these legends. And that footage is out there. Previously, I know the person who took the footage that now I think is gone. Like, it's on YouTube somewhere. I have to locate that because we're talking about VHS, y'all. You know what I'm saying? VHS. So probably now it transferred to DVD, right? And who uses DVD anymore? So now we use YouTube. Anyway, so yeah, I had that experience, yo. And honestly, a lot of people can live this life and never have experience like that. So I know that was a rare opportunity for me. And honestly, it changed my life. So I was 13 when that happened, and it really just kind of set the tone for me, just what I wanted to do with my life and what I saw, what my path would be as a musician. Mamadi 𝗟𝗡𝗦 asked me on that particular trip, he said, "Before we begin any of this work that we're going to do," he said, "I have a question for you." He said, "You don't have to answer it right now." He said, "Who are you?" And I went back. It took me about a year to figure that out. But once I understood what that meant to understand who I am and how I see myself in the world and how I want to lead in the world with my character and what I want to do with the instrument, the djembe, or with music, or whatever it is. I had to define that moment for myself. And I think that that's important because, you know, anybody that works with any type of art, right? What you are is an alchemist. You're creating alchemy, right? But we can all agree that when you look at certain people, they're in their calling, right? They understand, they establish how they want to see themselves in the world, and they are very, very comfortable who they are. And you can't really begin that process of that journey until you have that moment. And I can say that I was young and I was privileged, you know, to work with an elder that blessed me with that, you know. So I'll talk about my education, and then I'll start talking about how like just career developed for me, you know. If you have any comments, anything you want to say, you want to put the fist up, whatever you want to do, bless me with it. Education. What's up, hey? Yeah. See one of my students blessing me up. What's up, Rachel? Yeah. We're gonna talk about extra session a little bit. So yeah, education. So I will say that I had a really interesting time with school. I would say in my journey. Okay, so imagine the first time I left the country, right? Well, actually, the first time I traveled, like doing anything artistic, I was 11 years old. I traveled with Massey I made to Hawaii. We went to Honolulu, we went to the Big Island, and they were on tour with his group, and I got a chance to perform. I did capoeira, I was drumming. I was 11 years old. Okay. Then after that, I went to Bahia, Brazil, and I was there for like 4 months, you know. And then after that, I go to Africa, right? And since then, I've been to Africa. I lost count at this point, but I've been telling people 9 times because I believe that's how many times I've been. It could be more, right? But so, you know, imagine you're going to school and then you all of a sudden leave and you travel the world and you're super young, right? And I saw, you know, I had that experience with 𝗟𝗪𝗘𝗦 that I told you, you know, I'm in a completely different land, completely different culture, and I'm learning about my culture. I'm having this expansion of who I am, right? And I'm seeing the world from a very different lens. I'm seeing Africans in Brazil. I'm seeing Africans in Africa. I'm playing and I'm becoming family, right? So honestly, coming back and going to school in this, you know, Western system of like, you know, 8 hours of, you know, you got to learn, you know, your state standards and, you know, be in classroom and stuff like that. My mind was not focused on what was happening in the moment. You know, I was thinking about Africa. I was thinking about rhythms. I would get in trouble all the time for drumming on my desk, you know. I was privileged to go to a performing arts magnet middle school, Milliken Middle School. So I was able to do music. I was also in the drama department. I was doing all of that. But again, my grades were always my somanas, you know what I'm saying? Because my mind was not just stuck on even my social, like my friends and all of that. I wasn't like just in that box. I had a very different view of the world at that time. So, you know, I went to Hamilton High School, and anybody knows in Los Angeles, that is a performing arts music high school that a lot of, you know, notable players pass through. One of my peers, one of my brothers, and one of my inspiration, Kamasi Washington, also went to Hamilton. There's a lot of folks. They had a strong music program. Strong. What's up? Yeah. That's my big bro. I love this dude. Inspiring jazz. This generation's legend. This generation's pioneer. Holding down jazz in a whole nother way. I'll talk about my relationship with Kamasi a little bit later, but so, you know, I would go to Africa every year, and sometimes I would go before the winter break, and sometimes I would go during the winter break and come back a month after school already started. So you can imagine my grades were not always that great, but it's not like I was a bad kid. When I was there, my teachers would tell you like I was the most respectful. I was super smart. I was good. It's just that I was gone all the time. right? So it made it really hard to pass through smooth, you know what I'm saying? Because I was just somewhere else, you know, but I managed to, I will say that I connected with a group of folks that I'm still connected to today, and they're all notable musicians. They're all dope human beings, and doing their thing in the industry. So, you know, we all stayed connected in that way. I was doing the drum line, I was doing the marching band, I was in every music ensemble, you know, percussion ensemble, I was in everything. And I did good with all my music stuff. You know, I was really good with English. I think the hardest thing for me was math, even though, you know, I play these music and ancient mathematics and stuff like that. It was hard for me to focus, you know? So I'll tell you a funny story. And, you know, what I used to do is, so I would do stuff like I would, if I had to be honest, you know, I would ditch school with my partner Freddie. I would ditch. We would get to school, you know, it'd be like you know, first couple classes go by and we'd be like, you know what? Let's go to Guitar Center. So, or Hollywood Pro Drum Shop, right? Or Sam Ash or something. And I would literally leave. And, you know, the interesting thing about me and my relationship with him was we were both percussionists. So we would take our books, we would take drumsticks, and that was like the main thing that we had. And we would go and we would do adventurous stuff like walk all the way from Hamilton High School to the garage to Guitar Center, which is not close. You're talking about going from West LA to Hollywood. But we would drum on everything, on the street poles, on stop signs, mailboxes, on our books. We would literally drum the entire way, like on everything. We were just percussion. You know what I'm saying? And then we would get to these places and then we'd just be spending our day there. So I did a lot of stuff like that, you know, which again, it's funny, you know, I'm not saying that, you know, it was the right thing to do, but that's my story. So y'all hearing my story, right? So eventually, you know, I had the privilege of going to Cal Arts, right? And the interesting thing about Cal Arts is, you know, I had some really notable mentors there. The 𝗟𝗩 𝗦𝗧𝗢𝗥𝗜𝗦 and the 𝗟𝗑 family really helped me be a part of the African community there in the drum ensemble. I did some Latin percussion there too, music theory, all that. But honestly, what was bugging me is like, here I am still stuck in school and I keep going to Africa. And at this point I had an opportunity, you know, Mama D was basically waiting, like, as soon as you ready, come travel with me, come work with me. He had instructional DVDs that he was working on, recordings for books and stuff. And, you know, I had to make a decision, like, do I want to finish here or do I want to miss this opportunity to study with my Baba, my elder? So I did, you know, I did have the opportunity to travel, and I left school and I started traveling with Mama D, and really, you know, had these incredible experiences of being in Africa. You know, I will say this, you know, when I go to places like Brazil, when I go to places like Cuba, when I go to places like Africa, I'm not going as a tourist. I'm not going as a, you know, someone who just an African-American dude, you know, who, you know, just wants to be like a foreigner. No, that's my life. This stuff is my life. So when I go there, you know, they don't look at me, especially Guinea. Any of you have ever been to Africa, especially, and particularly I'll talk about Guinea. They'll call you, they have this term that we say when you're a foreigner, they call you Fote, right? Anybody on here knows what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about, Fote. Usually they refer to foreigner, Westerners, white people, right? They say you're a Fote, you're a foreigner. And because of the way that the culture developed or the education developed, European influence on African, you know, countries, you know, their awareness of history, their awareness of what's happening outside of Africa sometimes can be very Europeanized, right? Let's just be honest. So sometimes they'll even look at someone that's Black from another place. You could be Black European, you could be, you know, Black, you know, Latin, you can be, you know, Black American, but they see you and they will still say Fote because they think, you know, you're not from here. Right? They see it that way. And I had to really, you know, I learned that and it was like, whoa, you know, but I'll tell you right now, when you say, especially in Guinea, especially in the neighborhood, Matoto, when you say Kahlil Cummings, they don't think this disconnect, right? That's Kahlil. He's Guinean. He's African, right? And I believe that, you know, especially my generation at that time, I really embedded myself in the cultural community in that way. And so, yeah. So, you know, I had the opportunity to do that. So, you know, I'll jump around a little bit, get into some fun stuff. I'm probably going to start telling a bunch of jokes and start, you know, having some fun. Eventually, you know, Mama D, you know, one of our journeys, one of our, you know, times together, he said something. He said, you know, you need to expand. You need to take all this music that you learned, you know, all this stuff. Djembe is your root, it's your language, you know, but expand. You can put that on any type of music. You can really just be a percussionist, be an artist, create alchemy, right? So that's really what I went on to do. And I found myself playing in places, you know, bringing the djembe on corporate stage or in the industry, in places that, you know, really this again, in the beginning of the episode, I talked about how important it is to acknowledge the ancestors and the stamp of African indigenous culture, right, that influences the entire globe. You have to understand, and you know, in Western culture and movies and music videos, you know, as we're trying to, especially African Americans, you know, understand our cultural identity and reclaim our identity, you know, sometimes you get this very this outlook on African culture that it's not really what it is, right? You get this outlook on African culture that you're disconnected, like Africa's over there. It was much harder when I was young to get to Africa than it is now. It was much harder to learn this stuff than it is now. It was much harder to develop these relationships than it is now. So I'm fortunate that I came from a generation I was able to develop these relationships, and I put myself around people that, you know, really opened the door for me. So, you know, I found myself performing notable choreographers, people like Jeffrey Page, people like Fatima, if you know, dancers. I work with a lot of dancers, so you know what I'm saying right now. These people were doing Grammys. These people were doing, you know, NAACP Image Awards. And so I had an opportunity to work with some dope artists on the regular. I became like kind of like, that's the dude you call if you need some percussion, right? And the interesting thing is a lot of times when you do like these type of shows, you know, a lot of folks, you know, your Ricky Minor and you know, Kevin Record and all those folks, you know, sometimes you could be on these TV shows and like the music, you're in the house band, so in your regular, sometimes, you know, you get put on these stages with these major artists and they want you to be a backdrop, right? I have to speak to that. Sometimes you're not even really drumming, or sometimes you record before and then when you're on stage, you're not really playing, right? And I'm gonna speak to something, because I do want to speak to this. It's important. You know, where we're at musically in the industry right now, how hard it is to make money off of music, you know, with your streams, you know, your Spotify's and your Pandoras and your YouTubes and all of that is very different now. Even how you get paid as an artist for being on stage with other big artists, you know, it's something that we got to think about, especially in the time frame that we are in 2021. But if I had to speak to the contrary of that, the blessings, you know, man, people that I've worked with, you know, probably somebody that I was really inspired by, and I had the opportunity to work with him and record with him, was Kendrick Lamar. I say all this, you know, stuff that I journeyed to Africa, journeyed to Brazil, journeyed to Cuba, right? But one thing that I always maintain is, you know, my true culture is I'm an African American. You know, my true culture is hip hop, you know? So hip hop to me is world music. It's the recycling and the recreation of musics of the world, right? To create funky rhythms that we can dance to, that we can vibe to, right? And the drums are so important. So when you start putting the culture back into that, and then and it's the voice of the people, right? It's the voice of the streets. It came out of, it's another renaissance that we're talking about, right? That was birthed out of this oppression of the culture that creates, or the racial oppression that's happening, that creates resistance. Resistance creates, you know, renaissance, you know? So working with folks like Pharrell, working with folks like Kendrick Lamar, working with folks like Janelle Monáe, um, it's so funny, doing this LP story, because then I get to go look back and remember and see all these folks that I was working with. I think we got some pictures coming in soon. Show you a couple folks that I had a chance to work with. Yeah, look at this, American Idol. This is Janelle Monáe. If you recognize some folks there, family right there. Pharrell and Hal. Oh, there goes some more LP cast right there. Uh-oh. Shout out. Most Def. Yeah. Another LP, Nikki Campbell. What's up? We rocking. Yeah. I see you, Nikki. Yeah. So, I would say that the most beautiful thing to me working with the culture in this way is that, being on stage, being a percussionist, especially, and having all these, look, let's just be honest. When you're in a band, you ain't nothing without your drummer, right? Let's be honest. Y'all horn players, y'all guitar players, all that, y'all bring your instrument, you bring your axe, but when a percussionist comes, he brings a whole full setup, right? And sometimes you be driving in the car and you have you got more setup in your car than your car is worth. That's a journey, right? So I would say that it's beautiful, to connect with LP. I will say that I'm super thankful because, being able to be anywhere I am in the world and have access to a company that supports me and gives me these brand new instruments, or have access to backline setups that really it just makes you feel really, really, really connected. And I would say LP is one of the best in that sense. I'm always cool with my backline, no matter who I'm on tour with, and I've done some incredible things. I've found myself in places like Japan, and I've been the musical director, and I've created music for Takarazuka, right? And if you've ever been to Japan, like when you say Takarazuka, it's like saying Broadway, it's like saying Disney. It's its own thing. And being an African American and being regular, I think about 5-6 times now I've composed music for Takarazuka, and literally I get there and I have my setup, I have everything that I need, all the instruments that I need. I traveled to Italy, to Rome with Rocky Downey. I found myself performing at the Vatican. Get that. I'm at the Vatican rocking, and I'm playing a djembe, I'm playing a conga. I would say that music and it's one of those things that, if it can send you around the world, and you really, when you travel, I will honestly say that you expand your consciousness. When you speak different languages, you eat different food, you're vulnerable, you're in places you've never been, expand your consciousness. And I'm just one of those people that happened very early for me, So, I think I was always around adults. I was always around, I was a kid in the room, and I just grew up, and I had to this is my journey, right? So one of the things that I did, aside from all of the beautiful people that I played with, and it's really hard for me to talk about myself. I wish that somebody could help facilitate the conversation so I can stay on track. I hope I'm doing all right for y'all. Something that I'm really proud of, a couple of things, is I created this collective called Extra Ancestral. And Extra Ancestral is that, with my family, a couple people that you may know in the LP family, 𝗟𝗣𝗦𝗘 Lohpez. Nikki Campbell also rocks with us. There's a lot of folks. Extra Ancestral is a collective of artists, okay? Musicians, dancers, okay? And some of my favorite folks to play with, especially out here in LA, I think we have a picture of Extra Ancestral family. Yeah, look at that beautiful family right there. Yes, that's my family. We created this collective, and the idea is that we connect the dots of the African diaspora. So For me, something that's real important is we talk music, but I want to get into a couple things. It's so important that beyond music, there's no music without dance. When you're playing your instruments are dancing. And dancers are creating the vibration, right? The music. So the two are inseparable. Super inseparable. They birth one another. There's an African Yoruba proverb, 𝗟𝗣 right, which talks about 𝗟𝗩 drummed, 𝗟𝗣 danced, right? It's talking about the marriage between music and dance. It's super important. So we created this collective, and we do performances, but not like having all the musicians in the back. We put the dancers in the front, and they're narrating and they're creating the stories. And all the musicians, when they take their solos, they're playing to the dancers. You know what I'm saying? And and vice versa. We're connecting in that way. We do Afro-Brazilian, Afro-Cuban, West African. We create, and we in the lyrics, oftentimes if we combine traditional lyrics with also revolutionary lyrics to speak to the people. That's what extra ancestral is. And it is that. It's extra ancestral, and this is my family, and there's 3 branches of this family. So aside from the performance troupe, we do workshops. Okay, we created a platform in the midst of this pandemic where we're doing online classes constantly, bringing the healing to you in the form of music and dance, but connecting the dots, saying that Afro-Cuban culture and Afro-Brazilian culture through the cosmology or through Orisha practice, connect in these ways. How do the dances and the music find harmony, and how do they doing the same thing over there that they're doing over here, and how can we bring that together in workshops? And that's what we've been doing for a few years now. The third component is 𝗟𝗡𝗦𝗘, which is an all-women's drum ensemble. So listen, I've been teaching at the 𝗟𝗣 Culture Center out here in Los Angeles for a long, long time. And I noticed that, I had a lot of women students, women dancers. They were interested in drumming. And, I want to acknowledge a few people. So I have to acknowledge 𝗟𝗣 𝗦𝗧𝗢𝗥 because he's one of the co-founders of Extra Ancestral, and I have to acknowledge Rachel Hernandez is also one of the co-founders. She's a master Afro-Brazilian dancer. She in her journey has been really, really pivotal to the Extra Ancestral movement because she's created this influence of dancers, being interested in music and understanding how much the two were important. So what I had, is a wave of dancers being interested in music. Or women drummers as well. So I decided to start a drum ensemble, 𝗟𝗣 All Queens Drum Ensemble. And when I tell you, I was fortunate enough to manifest this, but I'm gonna tell you right now, brothers, it's all good. But when you see a room full of about 10 or even more women drumming, local style Afro-Brazilian drumming, killing it, I'm sorry, there's something super powerful about that. Super, super, super powerful about that. And these are nurses. These are, educators, these are moms, these are parents, right? These are, activists. These are people in the community that are dedicated to the drum, right? And they do amazing work. I believe we have a video of 𝗟𝗡𝗦𝗘 rocking. We'll show you right here. Look at these. Yeah. Look at these queens. Look at these queens. Yeah. Yeah. So that's just a little tease. I'm telling you, anybody who's ever seen Bloco Bini, they will bless your spirit. They will uplift you. Shout out to Bloco Bini right now. Shout out to the All Queens Drum Ensemble. You know, I'm telling you, these queens will be standing on the drums. You know, they'll put the drums down, they'll dance, and they can play. They can play, y'all. They not fronting. They study. They study. They play. This is a real deal. So I'm really, really, really thankful for Bloco Bini. It's given me life. In my journey, you know, I think oftentimes we get on here, we can talk about, you know, a lot of the notable people that we played for. But I would tell you right now, what means more to me is the local community of people that support on and learn from me. But beyond that, expand. And Bloco Bini is one of those projects. Extra Ancestors is one of those projects that is just complete expansion of creative alchemy in every sense of the word, you know. So I want to give a big shout out to those queens. And I want to show a video of Extra Ancestral rocking. We rocked the Skirball Center, sold it out, I think 2 years ago. 𝗟𝗩𝗘𝗦 was on that, Nikki was on that. I think we have that somewhere. We'll pull that up. Get that to you in a second. Where's that at? Actually, this is a different video right here. Okay, so that joint, that's cool. We'll get to that joint in a second. I see. So let's see, where should I go? If you have any comments, anything you want to talk about, bless me up, bless me up. So got it. So we'll get to that bit in a second. That's one of my other joints. So yeah, you know, in the midst of this pandemic, I want to speak to 2020 obviously showed us a lot. And I can say that it's been an incredible experience to, you know, as we as artists have no idea when we're going to perform, see a stage again. I've been able to do some notable performances and really speak to the movement through Extra Ancestral, really speak to the movement with Bloco Bini and create a platform where we can teach, learn. You know, we've done performances and raised funds and dedicated it and sent all the money to Black Lives Matter. It's something that we strongly believe in. A couple of things that I want to acknowledge. I would say that people that I've played with that strongly inspire me. I would say one of them being Kamasi Washington. You know, we had some really, really dope performances. There's a performance that we did. It's on Amazon Prime now. We performed at the Apollo, and he actually did a whole film based off of this event. We did that, I believe, in 2018, 2019, performed at the Apollo. If you haven't seen that performance, you should go when you hang up or when we're done with this and go on Amazon Prime and watch that performance at the Apollo. I think we have some pictures of that, perhaps, for you. We'll bless you up with that in a minute. You know, we were set to, before the pandemic hit, we were set to do the Hollywood Bowl, and obviously that didn't happen. I was really looking forward to that because we were going to share that bill with Flying Lotus, and we were going to have an orchestra, and it was about to be live. And if you know Kamasi's music, it's jazz expanded, it's hybrid jazz, it's all that, it's cinematic, and it really influences the music that I create now that in my own work, you know, with Extra Ancestral that I create. As far as Hollywood Bowl, man, I think I have some pictures of me, you know, rocking the Hollywood Bowl with Sergio Mendes, another LP. Yeah, that's GB right there. That's the fam. That was a fun one. Sold out 2 nights at the Hollywood Bowl and got a chance to rock with my boy GB. I love GB. LP family right there. Big up GB. We got a couple clips, a couple fun pictures of us performing at the Miracle Theater out here with Extra Ancestral Ensemble. Yeah, that was actually my birthday. Or actually, I think I shared this photo on my birthday. Rando right there, 𝗟𝗣 𝗦𝗧𝗢𝗥𝗘𝗦, 𝗟𝗣𝗦𝗘, custom shirt I had made. I'm trying to find that shirt. I don't know where it is. Look at Nikki and GB. Yeah. Funny thing is, yo, me and Nikki, you know, we've known each other for so long. I mean, I think I met Nikki when I was 9 years old. You know, she met me through my father. Funny thing is, you know, we always make the same drum face. When we play, we be making the same drum face. Why me and Nikki make the same drum face though? I always tripped on that, you know. Anybody knows about drum face, you know, like the faces that you make when you playing. Yeah. So I guess we're gonna get into a conversation. I'm gonna bring up my big brother Jerry real quick, but before I do that, one thing that I love to do is, you know, one thing that I learned through 𝗟𝗡𝗦𝗘𝗦 is how important it is to make your drum beautiful. You know, your drum is your axe, your main instrument. It's what you come out with, and you want to make sure that when people see it, it's like a majestic instrument, right? And it's beautiful, and that thing that's making sound, you know, it's creating a drum particularly, you know, it's creating, you know, ancient sonic mathematics, right? And it's creating sound that communicates with time and space. And it also is creating rhythms and language of the ancestors. And it's creating, and it's dancing, right? It's committing to the past, present, future, and heaven all coming together in the center. You know what I'm saying? And very much, I use that term inspired by 𝗟𝗩𝗦𝗘𝗦 cosmology. And I believe that that's the beauty of the instrument. It's a communicator. It's the tongue of the ancestors. So for me, it's very important when I pull out my drum, you know, whether I'm using traditional rhythms or creating contemporary rhythms with music that I'm playing, it's very important that it's beautiful when you see it. So I do a lot of customizing, and I try to make my drums look really nice. This is an LP joint, customized, you know what I'm saying? And I had a little help doing this, but I put, you know, a lot of work into this. This is what I like to do, you know. I like my instruments to look majestic and beautiful. So while I invite my brother, Jerry, to come on and jump in this conversation, I just want to show the clip of me rocking at LA folks. You know, we used to do this, you know, every Sunday during the summer. We used to rock at 𝗟𝗪𝗠. And for me, I love the 𝗟𝗪𝗑𝗦 particularly. I mean, because it's close to the djembe as far as it sounds. I'm going to tell you a quick little story. Come the story. See, you got me. How did the 𝗟𝗪𝗑𝗦 get to Brazil, right? How did that happen? So I know this story, and this is a story that I actually, you know, learned from 𝗟𝗩𝗪𝗘 Lopez. So I'm gonna drop it how I know it. Hopefully I get it right. So, you know, Afro-Brazilian bloco instruments, you have the surdo, bass drum instrument, right? You have the repique, it's very loud, right? You have other different instruments, pandeiro, atabaques. You know, you have samba instruments. Samba reggae is a little bit different. Bloco, when you're creating a big group, right? An ensemble. You're walking down the street, you're showing that you represent royalty. You come from kings and queens. You're making a statement. It's, again, that Renaissance. You're a big sound of resistance, and you're representing the culture. That's what blocos are, right? So you will notice the emergence of the 𝗟𝗪𝗑𝗦 instrument coming in. And, you know, interesting enough, because it sounds like a djembe, right? So I'm gonna tell you the story that I know. So very notable musician in Brazil, Carlinhos Brown, right? 𝗟𝗪𝗘𝗦 tells a story. He remembers being in New York, right? And he's at a music store. And here comes Carlinhos Brown walks in. And a lot of people may know this if you met him or not, but he was highly influenced by 𝗟𝗪𝗘𝗦. So he loved the sound of the djembe. So he goes into this drum store and he buys, you know, 25 Remo djembes at the time, right? And he takes them back to Brazil. From there, they eventually constructed the 𝗟𝗪𝗑𝗦, modeled after that, right? So that's how you'll find, you know, in the early 90s, this is emergence of the 𝗟𝗪𝗑𝗦 instrument. So that's just a little story that I wanted to share with you there, just a little bit of ethnology of the 𝗟𝗪𝗑𝗦 in Brazil. I'm sure there's other stories, other versions of how different instruments came. You got to also acknowledge that as many different Africans came, the Ghanaians at one point came, right? The Ewe, the people from Congo, right? people from Yoruba land, and then you had Benin and Yoruba land, right? In Angola, you had the Angola War. So all these different slaves and African influences coming. So they bring all the different instruments, right? So that's how you have all these different instruments, capoeira. That's how you have all these different instruments in samba, all these different instruments in contemporary Brazilian music, right? Same thing in Cuba, same thing happened. Why is the cajon there? Why do you play the cajon? Why, who, you know, where did that manifest? You take away the drums, where does the clave come from? The first clave was here on the hand, right? You know? So when you don't have the instruments, you play a box, right? You play a cajon, you know? So it's important that you know these things. These things didn't just manifest. People just decided they wanted to play a box, or people didn't decide to create these rhythms and sing songs about life, or you know, secular songs about life. That happened for a reason. This is culture, and there's a reason why that happened. So I say that I got, you know, I do my little thing where I go off and I start saying things. Let's show this video of me rocking this 𝗟𝗡, and then we'll bring Jerry on. Woo! Ay, ay. Tuned up good that day. Tudo. Isso. Oh my goodness. You know, I feel like that's one of those instruments that, you know, it has the sound of a djembe, but when you bring it in a club setting, you can play with any style of music. I truly feel that way. So let's bring up big brother Jerry. Let's get into a conversation. Let's see what we talking about. Jerry, where you at? Where's my man at? Yeah. How you doing, Jerry? We can't hear you.
Here we go.
There you are.
Kahlil, thank you, man. Wow, thank you for being part of this and for sharing your story. It's a journey, you know. Everybody's got a journey. That's your beautiful journey that you've taken. Man, I love hearing about the mentors too. I'm always, you know, on our last discussion with 𝗟𝗩 𝗦𝗧𝗢𝗥𝗜𝗚, he was talking about his mentors and how you have yours with 𝗟𝗩𝗘𝗦 𝗟𝗑𝗓 and your travels to Africa, man. That's beautiful. You know, that, you know, connecting. That's what it's about. But I'd love to, like, when you traveled to Africa, how did you feel? Like, what were some of the lessons you've learned, or what was some of the aha moments that you've kind of, you know, just brought into your playing and to who you are as a person, a musician, and as a community leader? What were some of the lessons that you've got from that, or what did you feel?
I feel definitely, you know, I could say the first time going to Africa, getting off the airplane, you know, walking off, like, you know, the steps, and you're outside and the Africa humidity, air hit me. Honestly, my father and I, we fell to the ground, we kissed the ground, we touched home, you know, and I was so young, but I really understood that. And also, I think for me, seeing where the djembe comes from, seeing how people communicate with this instrument. You know, I witness djembe folas doing things that are unmeasurable with that instrument. You know, yeah. I've seen people play phrases and create reactions. You know, I basically seen magic, if I had to be honest, you know, and to experience that young, it really opened me up to, like, wow, this is not just an instrument. This is a communicator. This is an ancestral instrument that literally has the power to touch people in a very, very powerful way. You know, they say out of the djembe, they say was birthed 𝗟𝗏. 𝗟𝗏 in Yoruba language, in Manding language means joy, you know? And that's literally the medicine. When you see this in a traditional setting, in traditional circles, when they're playing the djembe, that's the medicine. That's the medicine, you know? And I think another moment for me is having the relationship with someone like 𝗟𝗡𝗪𝗑. I talk about it all the time because, you know, this dude, what's very unique about him is his ability to communicate, but his language on the instrument. You know, I've literally seen elders talk to each other, speak the language, you know, and language has so many different ways, right? Tones and different ways that you can communicate. You know, improvisation is something that, you know, it happens in these cycles, and you always come back to a point. It's very it's structured, and there his ability to take it and create alchemy, create jazz. It really made me look at this instrument like, yo, no matter what setting I'm in, but when I'm playing this, you know, if I want to tap into spirit or however I choose to communicate, but there's something bigger at work happening here, you know? And that's something that when you go to the homeland, you see that. And I think that honestly, that's really helped me, you know, just really expand my consciousness as far as for music in general.
Wow, that's beautiful, man. That's you very lucky to have that experience as well too. I mean, to bring it back home too and share it with everybody else as well, you know, and yeah, I mean, you're talking about ancestors and how that's important, and how you connect to your roots and your ancestors. Now, how do you translate that to with what you're doing musically, and of course, like, because you do an amazing job out there with the community, which is beautiful, and we need that more than ever too right now. And I love to see like Nikki working in the community, 𝗟𝗣𝗦𝗘 𝗟𝗑, and all our amazing LP family that are out there, you know, spreading love and kind of just sharing what their from their travels and their experiences and how they connected to their cultural roots. So I think that's a very important thing to give back to the community and to help help people out as well too, and rediscover theirs as well. So
absolutely, I truly agree with that. I think I said it earlier, you know. I think for me, in telling my story, it was more important for me to focus on the way that we're creating community and the way that we're healing and the way that we're taking these instruments. You know, you and I once had a conversation. Okay, we're a drum company. Why is it important that you have a drum in your home, right? You have a conga sitting in the corner, or you have whatever it is, you know, beyond a company just wanting you to have that conga when you or whatever that is in your house. That instrument that's there comes from a people. That instrument there is an ancestor, and there's a history, and there's a language, and there's a whole people that belong to that. You know, there's a whole history going on. So it's important that, yeah, we can put that on stage and entertain, but it's also important that we remind ourselves, and especially go back to the local communities, especially you take a year like 2021. What does that mean for culture? You know, the awareness that's waking up now, or people are realizing how important, you know, Black and Indigenous solidarity, or solidarity in general, is the stamp that culture has. People are realizing how important it is to go back to the roots, you know? And when you do that, then that means that you got to go back in history, and you have to remind people, look, you know, there's a history why Afro-Cubans play this particular instrument. There's rhythms that have certain meanings, certain purposes, why they're played, you know, and they're played for specific occasions. There's a time and place that they're played. The language that goes on this particular rhythm comes from this place, right? These people. And every drum that you find has its own history in that way. So I feel that it's so important. You say, you know, working with ancestry, you know, I always say this, one thing that we all have in common is ancestors. As long as we're human beings, or just the way that the universe vibrates, we all have ancestors in common, you know? So how much more beautiful would it be to see us come together in that sense? And that's what LP is really, really moving in that direction. We want you to understand that these drums, you know, it's not just to sit in the house and collect dust. It's not for decoration. And yeah, it does make you feel good. Yeah, sometimes you want to go to a drum circle and play. But understand that there's a history behind that. There's a struggle. There's an oppression, you know? There's a renaissance birthed out of oppression that comes with that instrument. So when you're looking at that instrument in your home, or you're learning the songs and the dances, that's a revolution in itself. That's speaking to the movement in itself, you know?
Yes.
So
love it. That's it, man. That, you know, and that's exactly what we have to showcase, you know. And as for LP, it's always been, yeah, we don't just want to put a conga for sale, you know. We don't want to just put a picture of a conga and the exact dimensions and all that, and then see you later. No, it's you're right. It's absolutely more than that. It's culture. It's history. It's a part of people's lives, you know. Absolutely. And it means a lot. And I've always loved it, you know, when I talk to artists like you and like, you know, so many other artists that share with us exactly how we can share this information with the public, and how we can actually post that on our LP website or improve it. And especially now with everything that's happening, and obviously with the, you know, a lot of what's happening in current day events, we need to share more than ever and communicate more than ever. And I think the drum is definitely a way to communicate. Absolutely. It opens us up, and it really does brings us together, you know, culturally. It's like food, you know, in a sense.
Absolutely.
You know, but I love that, because you're also, that's what you do. You share all this knowledge, and you create this community, and you do it not only with drumming but also with dance as well, which is really incredible. And I love that you said about the connection between dance and the drumming, and how that really comes together. The dancers that you have that I've seen, man, just powerful, you know, because they're also they're a big part of the connection as well. So maybe you could tell me a little bit more about that, and about Extra Ancestral, and okay. how do you put that all together?
For sure. So again, you know, I was very fortunate I work with a lot of dancers in a traditional sense. But I was very fortunate to over you know, a span of like 7-8 years to connect with the dance community, particularly Rachel Hernandez at the Brazil Culture Center. Eventually we created Extra Ancestral. And honestly, you know, when you see musicians, and okay, let's just be like this. I'll start here. You go to the generation before me, right? People that were traveling with ballets or traveling with folklore, you know, folklorical different ensembles. You know, the people that would often come overseas, you know, they were artists. Whether they be a dancer, they could play music, and whether they were musicians, they can also dance. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And honestly, it's like, because they're messengers, they're just carrying the tradition, right? Their talent, they're artists, right? And one thing that we really started to see, and especially in LA, is how beautiful would it be to see that come back together, but not come together in a way where it's like, you know, just focus on dance class, okay, and drum class, but really, what does it look like to say, okay, you know, in Afro-Cuban Orisha practice, this particular Orisha dances like this, in Cuba and in Brazil it dances like this. Wow, musically, harmonically, or aesthetically, there's similarities. Let's bring those similarities together and create alchemy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that's basically what Extra Ancestral does in connection to dance. So for me, you know, oftentimes when we were, you know, when we're creating music or creating, you know, for me, the story is going to be told through the dance. You know, they're narrators. You know what I mean? So when you're looking at choreography, you know, you're not just looking at choreography that's just marking. You know, this is not the difference between a dance ensemble that has musicians, right? This is the dance is creating the storyline. And if a musician is soloing, whether it be a saxophonist or keyboard player, they're playing to the dance. Imagine what that does to musicians.
Oh yeah.
You know, imagine, you know, what that, if you saw, you know, Kamasi playing to a dancer, imagine. You know, and honestly, it's been a journey in that sense, because I look at the musicians, and when everybody's on that wavelength, it creates something that I've never seen before, you know? And so for us, that's it's super important. And then also, and then those dancers in a hot second will go to drums. They'll go to drums, and then they'll start drumming, and they can play. And then you're also seeing, previously 30 years ago, you didn't see women drumming. And in some cases, in a traditional sense, that it wasn't allowed for a long time. That you would see that. So as culture evolved, and I don't mean that there's something wrong with that. I mean that culture evolved, but that was more accepted, right? And there's power in that. Now what you're seeing is that more and more and more. And again, the spirit of the drum, let's be clear. The spirit of the drum, 𝗟𝗣𝗦𝗚, is a woman deity. Okay? It's a woman deity. Let's be clear. Okay? So if you look at the 𝗟𝗡 itself, if you look at the bowl of the 𝗟𝗡, it represents the womb. Okay? And there's power in the womb. Obviously, we know that. Okay? So for me, look, people be having that conversation about, the egg, what came first, the egg or the chicken. We still don't know the answer. But I'll tell you this, right? A woman did not come from the rib of a man. Okay? Yeah. A woman came out of the womb into this world, and all men came from their mothers, right? So the spirit of the drum, 𝗟𝗣𝗦𝗚, is a woman deity, So in a lot of ways, especially when we as men, particularly when we take on the role through initiation to preserve the sonic science of these rhythms to uphold community, right? We submit and we swear to that deity, right? We swear to uphold community in this way, okay? And oftentimes, if you understand, it's not the oppression of women when they're saying women can't drum. It's not that. It's actually the opposite. It's because the sacrednicity that women carry in this world, that we serve this energy, okay? And oftentimes, I've heard, like, if you put a woman in a masquerade, it would be too powerful. It'd be too powerful, So we have to change the narrative of that, I remember going to Cuba with Nikki, and we were there with 𝗟𝗓, legendary 𝗟𝗓 from Los Muñequitos Ibae, okay? And, we were setting up some classes, and, he's like, oh, I don't teach women. And Nikki said, why? He said, because women are sacred. I'd be ashamed of myself. So, and this is across the, again, that narrative is changing, in the sense that I think it's important, the balance of who we are in human nature, that for me, getting in tune and swearing to this idea of 𝗟𝗣𝗦𝗚, or this spirit of 𝗟𝗣𝗦𝗚, to me, that's me getting closer and connecting with my feminine self,
Beautiful.
And balancing and walking and leading with my character, leading with love, something, So, I don't know where I went.
That's beautiful. That's exactly it. Oh man, that's keep going. Balance, man. I love that. Balance is everything, right? Yeah. I mean, we have to have that. I remember Milena telling me that women were not allowed to play the bata in Cuba. Mm-hmm. So so we have to have that balance, which is important. And what better time than right now, especially with everything that's happening. But how have you, as an artist, as a community leader, with everything that's happening in current day events, how has that inspired you as well, to get the message across about cultural awareness and diversity? And I love what you were saying too before about the music coming from the streets, and I think like a lot of this amazing music has come from the streets, has come from oppression, and from all that comes art, comes beauty, comes strength, So I love to hear your thoughts on all that.
Okay, well, you're gonna get me going. So I will say, particularly if we talked about 2020, the year started off, we lost Kobe Bryant, right? And it just seemed like the year just kept getting worse and worse from that point. Honestly, I will say, and I'm going to speak to this very directly, you know, seeing the images and being reminded of the painful realization of racism that exists in this country, that has always existed since the incarnation of this country, to constantly be reminded that throughout the years, I think it hit a boiling point in 2020. Not only for, you know, just African Americans here and indigenous people who this is their land for the first place, but also showed the world, right? I witnessed one of the largest protests and uprisings ever in the history of the world. And it was speaking to the racism and the pain and you know, what we've witnessed and constantly been witnessing in this country. And I think that I will speak very directly that for me, the point that it boiled over to was when I literally saw, you know, George Floyd calling out for his mother. Because we acknowledge that when he was calling out for his mother, he summons all mothers. You know, he summoned all mothers, right? Which in a way, his sacrifice led to a strong, powerful movement. And the second time I was reminded of that is, you know, when Breonna Taylor's situation, you know, which now we're dealing with a Black woman in this sense, and still to this day is barely any justice, right? So these painful reminders that beat us up spiritually and create us to be weak and operate from a place of fear, you know, I felt like it's super important to go back and show strength. And that doesn't mean resorting to their way. As we know, their way is violence. As we know, their way is privileged and hate, right? No, our way has never been that. Our way is love, you know, and our way is the celebration of our culture, the celebration of our humanity, the celebration of our ancestors. And I felt that seeing this uprising happen, it reminded me of, you know, wow, we are civilized, beautiful human beings. And it's so important that we show the world that and bring this cultural stamp back alive. So for me, you know, I wanted to show strength. So I went back and I said, okay, we're going to work with the music. We're going to work with dance, and we're going to do performances, and we're going to do classes. We're going to do workshops with Extra Ancestral, you know, from the moment that I would say the 𝗟𝗡 situation happened. From the moment that happened, every month of workshops that we did was centered around these issues. And not necessarily how can we focus on the issue, but how can we heal from that? And how we heal from that is we bring these ancestral messages, these songs and these dances, and we find these connections, and then we empower each other. We build community around that. So we maintain those themes every month directly. You know, we had spiritual leaders in our community doing lectures, and really we focused on the healing, you know. And the thing is, you know, the music, you know, in the dance is that, right? 𝗟𝗧 is joy. It brings people out of this oppression and this fear, you know. So when you put some drums on the street and you start marching, that's different than just marching with picket stands, you know. Right. And it's, you know, and also, you know, you look back at the civil rights movement, you know, we have to acknowledge 𝗟𝗩, we have to acknowledge Olatunji, you know, Olatunji, Nigerian drummer. He brought the drum to the civil rights movement. A lot of times that history gets lost, you know? So what you saw again is a renaissance of culture. Look what happened to the music in the civil rights movement. Look at all the music that was created from Black and indigenous culture. Look at hip hop. Look at the oppression and the crack and what was going on in the world that created this world, you know, under this world influence of hip hop culture that influences the entire world. How you dress, how you talk, you know, all that, you know. So I feel that the same thing is happening right now. This is our renaissance, you know. This is our renaissance. And what more powerful way to do that than walk with your ancestors? You know, to know that you're recreating the sonic vibration that your ancestors created and sung and lived by. And now you're walking with those same rhythms. Think about it, especially on this US land. You got to acknowledge that this, yeah, I'm happy for the transfer of power from what happened of that fascist 4 years that we experienced. I'm gonna speak to it. I'm happy for this transfer of power, but this transfer of power took place on stolen land. Okay. And you have to understand those indigenous and those slaves that bled on this land are now ancestors within the earth of this land. They didn't go anywhere, they're still here. So when we re-invite these rhythms, we're acknowledging the land. And you're gonna make the land happy. Listen, out here yesterday in LA, I mean, I don't know about anywhere else. Out here yesterday in LA, while that transfer of power was happening, we had an earthquake out here. You know, you know what I'm saying? When you stir up things, the spirit is there. You know, everything that's happening right now, our ability with the pandemic, our ability to breathe, our ability to just like George Floyd said, I can't breathe. The whole world can't breathe right now because of COVID. Anybody think about that? You know, so right now, you know, we're now coming back to a place of humanity. Okay, and you know, human beings. We're learning how important it is to come together in humanity. And so when you recycle these rhythms and when you find the common themes and you can remember how your ancestors, you know, walked, and you can remember the songs, you're walking with not just yourself, you know, you're not walking with yourself, you're walking with the culture. So that the last thing I would say is that how important it is right now that we also have to acknowledge and show strength to the women that are holding it down for the movement right now as well. You know, and we as men, we have to do a we have to do a good job of standing behind and supporting and protecting our women, because, you know, look at how important it is in US history right now, the women that are contributing to this moment, you know,
lots of strength,
lots of strength there, you know. So I would say that strength is coming from a whole nother place. They're picking up for the strength that we have. Men, we have strength, but again, goes back to 𝗟𝗛𝗩𝗘𝗦, you know, goes back to this idea. So I really think for me, again, with extra ancestral and I will say that, you know, we've been speaking to the movement since before all of this, but what 2020 did is it awakened everything, you know, in everybody's consciousness and eyes. Everybody was asking for 2020 vision, and now they got it, you know, and now they see what's really going on, and the pain and the oppression is really happening. The systems that are broken, the isms that are broken, and the things that are no longer serving us as humanity. And we're now all being forced to quarantine. We're all being forced to isolate and resurvey how we want to see ourselves in the world, and how we're going to also affect the next generation. How are our children going to look at this? You know? So we don't play these rhythms now. Whenever would be a time to play these rhythms and dance? Whenever is there a time for solidarity? You know, the more that we come together, 𝗟𝗪𝗠𝗪𝗓, the more that we break bread together and combine our resources, you know, we create equity for community. And I think that's really something that I want to do. And for me, I hate to, some people get uncomfortable when we say weapon, you know, but I say our weapon is love. Our weapon is music. Our weapon is dance, you know, and I don't mean, you know, a weapon that we're using to strike down and you know, vanquish our enemies. No, we're using love. And if you don't understand that, if you don't operate from a place of love, if your weapon is hate and violence, then unfortunately you're gonna deal with ancestors. You're gonna deal with bloodlines that have experienced this and are now operating from an ancestral realm to assist us in this moment. So the culture and the music is something that's omnipresent. I don't care if you're from Mexico, I don't care if you're from Haiti, Brazil, Africa, you know, Japan, wherever, but culture, roots, ancestry, love, abundance, you know? So to me, that's why I teach. That's why I can't be on stage. I can't be at Hollywood Bowl, but I could be online, you know, in your living room, giving you some music and some history that gives you some life right now, you know?
Oh man, that's beautiful. That's incredible. Connecting to your roots, connecting to the earth, connecting to, you know, connecting with yourself as well too. You know, that this time in quarantine, you reflect on a lot of things and you look what's happening, and it's an incredible time right now that we're living in. I have to say that even though there's a lot of negativity going around, a lot of positivity is coming out from that, and to see everybody just rise up, it's incredible. It's beautiful. I think, you know, when I traveled to Peru, you know, I you know, my grandmother spoke Quechua, so it was for me to connect with my roots and to feel inspired and just you know, look at myself. I look at myself with other, you know, when I travel over there, I see a lot of the people that look the same, or, you know, I felt really connected. So, you know, is there anything you could share with anybody who, like, let's say if they want to reconnect with their roots, and any research, any cool books to check out, or any words of wisdom for anybody who wants to dive deeper in this time of quarantine, do some research on their own?
Shoot, research. Well, that's a broad question for me, because I definitely, I feel like in a lot of ways, this is the most, I feel like, educated I've been on, like, policy and politics. I think just really, you know, the following people like, you know, Shaun King, AOC, you know, people that are really making it practical for us to understand what's happening within the system. And then it made me look at what's happening in other movements around the world, you know, and other systems that are being broken or no longer working. I would say before I can even speak to books, you know, I think for me, a lot of the books as of late have been just really connecting with my spirituality, you know, which is Ifa. So I've really been trying to understand that. That's my spiritual basis, and I think it's important. I would say a couple of things to sort of answer your question. I would say right now, I think that sometimes we forget how important it is to pray. I think sometimes we forget how important it is to say thank you to the earth. And I think how we forget how important it is to acknowledge our parents and our bloodlines. You know, a lot of people, they like to be social media gurus. So they talk a lot about, like, you know, getting rid of that no longer serves you. And they talk about, like, you know, you have to get rid of, you know, trauma, and, you know, I'm stepping in a new way, and blah, blah, blah. That's all valid. But beyond what you're sharing, are you doing it? And if you're doing it, then you understand that removing trauma is not as easy as it is, but also understanding that, yeah, these experiences, the things that we're seeing right now, are creating trauma on humanity. So if I think any spiritual person will tell you that it's so important to go back to your spiritual self, pray, whatever your faith is, have faith that, and believe and you know. So for me, I think in this time, you know, I feel like I would say, really, I think just really educate yourself on your history, your ancestry, you know, really try to understand the system, understand how you want to see yourself within the system. I would say that's most important, you know. And I think in general, stop posting on social media and stop being controlled by the social dilemma, and just read a book. You know what I'm saying? Whatever that is, read a book, you know, even if it's poetry, you know, even if it's just word food, but get off of Google, stop being controlled by the algorithms, you know, and stop being, you know, what I would say the habit that I wanted to break for myself is like, yo, we have 4 years of everything that we were seeing, which is so crazy and so distracting and so like, wow, you know, that it's happy to wake up in a day and not see all of that. Yeah, it was like we were abused almost with like, you know, and social media definitely played a heavy role in that. So I guess to answer your question, man, it's like go outside, appreciate nature, appreciate the fact that you have health right now. If you have health, be thankful for that, and stay away from the millennial culture, you know, of like social media and all of that. And again, I'm not negating all the people that are doing the work, but I think it's just so important that I just want to hold people accountable for their words, you know? And I would say, you know, for me, I think the research that I've been doing, just really trying to just improve my wisdom of the music. I'm a student for life. So this relationship with these teachers, this work that I'm doing is ongoing. I don't teach a class without knowing that my reference is my teachers, and I know that they're a phone call away, they're a book away. You know, the information and the research is there. I'm not putting myself in position to stop my growth. I'm constantly learning. I'm a fetus in this culture. I have so much to learn, you know? And I've been using this time to really, really focus on that as well, you know? So I hope that answered your question a little bit.
Wow, man. Beautiful. No, words of wisdom, really. It's been, man, I'm looking at the time. I'm like, wow, we you could go into a whole another hour, man. I'm down for that. But thank you so much, Kahlil. Seriously, much love. Seriously, and it's been really it's an eye opener, and I appreciate everything you do, and all the different things that you've been doing in the community. It's not unnoticed. Thank you very much. You know, truly.
I appreciate you. I want to do a couple shout outs. So if I don't say you, I said you, because I'm shouting out anybody I've ever known in this life, friends, enemies alike. I don't care. I'm shouting out the world. But I want to acknowledge 𝗟𝗣 𝗦𝗧𝗢𝗥𝗘𝗦. I want to acknowledge Nikki Campbell. I want to acknowledge, you know, my extra ancestral fam. You know, I want to acknowledge, you know, the dancers that rock with me, Rachel Hernandez, you know, all the fam. I want to acknowledge, you know, I want to acknowledge my Tucson family. I want to acknowledge, you know, my Portland family. I want to acknowledge my African family, my Cuban family, my indigenous family, Guyana, you know. I want to acknowledge Kamasi. I miss you, brother. I hope we can play together soon or record, you know. I want to acknowledge Kabram. I want to acknowledge all my LP fam. 𝗟𝗛𝗦, keep making those beautiful drums. You know what I'm saying? 𝗟𝗛𝗦, I want to say what's up. I want to see you soon. I want to build something. I want to customize something. You know, I really, really, really want to thank the LP family, because, you know, I would say that endorsing with LP has been a great journey for me. I really feel supported as an artist, and working with you, Jerry, has really given me a lot of encouragement since day one. You know, walking in there with Monyongo and Monyongo, what's up, brother? You know, Leon Mobley, the fam. You know what I'm saying? There's some pictures of the LP shipment when the shipment first came in. You know, I was like,
love it. I remember that.
Look at that, man. The thing is, I played every single one of those instruments. Beautiful. You know what I'm saying? It's like that. You know, I played every single one of those at some point. It's expanded since then. So I really want to thank the LP family. Real quick before we go, I want to show y'all a video. So 𝗟𝗛𝗦, if you don't know 𝗟𝗛𝗦, he's super dope. He makes things, you know, he's super like unique with how he creates things. And I feel like he created one of the best cajons that, you know, I literally have played. And I want to show you guys this video. Now, before we show this video, I want you to understand, okay? I'm guarantee you what you're going to see is the best cajon on the planet. Yes or yes? Check this out. Can we roll the video?
I agree.
Wow, look at that cajon. This is amazing. Look at this cajon right here. Uh-oh. Wait a minute. Hey! Oh boy. There you have it, y'all.
You made it sound amazing.
Yo. Yo.
That was beautiful, man.
Appreciate it. I appreciate it. I saw that at the factory. I was like, I gotta have this.
I gotta have it. It was right there on 𝗟𝗩𝗦's shelf right there.
He knew I liked it. He's like, you're playing it all day. He's not putting it down.
And you did say, I'm gonna send you a video. I'm like, all right, okay. Sure enough. I love it, man. Kahlil, thank you so much, man. Thank you so much for your time, for sharing your story. Where can we find? There it is, right there. Jules is reading my mind.
Check me out. Check the website out. Check out Facebook, Instagram, 𝗟𝗩-𝗟𝗡33.
Beautiful.
Yes.
Any final comments or anything you'd like to tell people, and anything you'd like to say to everybody?
I would say just really think about leading with your character, leading with love, you know, and you know, we'll be all right. You know, we're together, and the more that we come together, the more we acknowledge one another, then our struggles become one, you know. Yeah. So the last thing I would say is, for all you out there, greet your altars for me, greet your ancestors for me, you know. All love.
Beautiful. Kahlil, thank you so much. Everybody, please stay safe. Just because we don't, you know, we're socially distancing. Let's all keep connected with each other, and call somebody that you haven't seen in quite a while. Give them a call, say hello, and please be safe, everybody. Thank you once again, Kahlil. Much love, and can't wait to hang again, man.
Yeah, I'm gonna see you soon, Jerry. Bless up, fam.